Okay, so yeah, I think we'll get going now. So welcome everyone to this webinar on open data discovery. So exploring information for everyone with ArcGIS Online. I'm Jason Getz, so I'm from the Geospatial Data and Analytics team at the City of Kitchener. And my role with the city is really to take the data, the location data that we have, and create knowledge from it, and sort of not just create the knowledge, but find ways to sort of give that knowledge in ways that people can consume and make smart decisions with. So creating dashboards, applications. A lot of you are in GIS, so you probably do very similar things. But really, like, the focus is really trying to not just show data, but create knowledge with the data. So at the City of Kitchener, we're always collecting large amounts of data. So we're constantly doing that. And the reason we're doing that is really to make smarter decisions that affect policies that better serve our communities. So for example, at the city, we gather and share information on tree health to ensure we maintain a healthy and sustainable tree canopy, right? Preparing for climate change, collecting traffic collision data, knowing which roads have been snow plowed to ensure providing safe travel, development plans and permits so we can monitor the growth of the city together, and even information we collect and create on finding your nearest parks and community services to sort of help our citizens navigate the city, and especially newcomers as well, to find the services that they need. And a lot of this data that we collect, we also provide in our open data portal. Having this open data is really important because it promotes transparency in government, empowers you with the information to get involved in decision making, and encourages engagement and collaboration to help address challenges in our community. So in this webinar, we're about an hour and a half. So we'll be done by 12:15 for sure, maybe a little earlier. And what we'll cover together are sort of the basics. So what is open data and why is it important? If you're already familiar with open data, I guess you'll just see my perspective on that. So we'll look at the benefits of open data, give some examples, exploring different types of data, what is GIS, and what does it have to do with everything. So we'll learn sort of GIS, spatial data, and open data are quite strongly linked together. We're going to do a demo of exploring how to consume open data from the City of Kitchener's GeoHub. So not just finding stuff, but yeah, let's have a look on how do we actually consume it. And we're going to do a little scavenger hunt. And then we'll get some hands-on experience making a free ArcGIS Online account, pulling, analyzing, and sharing the open data. So we'll go through a little tutorial. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll just sort of have a discussion. So we can do a Q&A using the Q&A chat box. Yeah. Great. Okay. And sort of really what I want you to take away from today is sort of understand open data and its importance, be able to set up your own free ArcGIS account. If you're already working, if you're sort of already deep in GIS and you have your own portal, I hope you can take away sort of mimicking what I'm presenting today, and perhaps it can help with you communicating how your citizens can also just create and set up their own free ArcGIS Online account. And then we'll explore some of the various data sets available at Kitchener and how we can consume that, visualize and analyze data, and again, that hands-on experience. Okay, so what is open data? We're at GOOD24, and the question is, or not the question, but really Go open data is behind open data. And so what is this? To me, really, it's about information that is freely accessible to the public. It can be used, reused, and shared without or with limited restrictions. So depending on, ideally, it's without restrictions, but depending on sort of some license restrictions with the data, you might have to limit that. It's really important that it promotes, that it that we have open data, sort of this movement to promote transparency, innovation, and collaboration. It's really about breaking down that barrier to get that data easily. I remember as an early researcher, when I wanted a set of data, I really had to like search through emails, emailing organizations and asking where and who to contact. And it takes a lot of work just to find a small data set that you're interested in. And sort of what open data is really allow us to do is sort of break that barrier where I can first search it online, see if that data set exists. A lot of the time, the open data is there and I can get into the data right away without having to go through many people. And we're not always best at answering emails right away. So having these portals, having the open data available is really useful. And there's sort of these principles of open data, right? It should be public. That means everyone should have access without barriers. We're not giving special privileges to anyone to access the data before anything. This is really about sort of data equity, data access equity. It should be machine readable. So just throwing on a PDF that isn't searchable, that's not open data. We really wanted to be able to go in there and quickly identify data. So open that PDF, search for something in the PDF and find the information you can quickly. License, so have a clear, specific description of the use of the license. Hopefully ideally it's unlimited. And it should be free of charge. So again, no barriers for accessing the data. Open data is really out to benefit everyone. So a lot of it is enhancing transparency and civic engagement. So for example, promoting active citizenship, research, and journalism. And like I said earlier, that's really about breaking down the barriers to get information right away. So as soon as you have an idea, try to get that information. Making it easier to reference government information. Fostering business growth, innovation, and cooperation. A big concern, for example, at the city of Kitchener is sort of how do we increase, like sort of develop more housing. It's not just the city of Kitchener, this is all of Canada. And sort of if we can have data available for developers, contractors to just access right away without having to do a request for, it saves time to get projects off the ground by them being able to access that data right away. And sharing data between agencies. So in terms of like thinking of between municipalities, different levels of municipalities, having everyone able, because we're always working together, having different groups being able to access information from different groups. So breaking down those silos to public information. And this is not even just within other organizations, but you can also think of this within your own organization. So at the City of Kitchener, we also sort of promote our open data as well for our own city staff to also go to and explore, as well as a quick way for them to view important information that they may want to need, and also for them to quickly be able to see what data is available. Not everyone has access to the full GIS database with all the information. So having an open data and an open data portal really allows people to get sort of a taste of what kind of information they can even ask for. So one of the sort of benefits that was really, that I really think is really great is sort of this promoting citizenship, active citizenship research in journalism. And just sort of the scale of open data is incredible. So like from the international and national level to getting data at the local level, it's pretty incredible what you can get. So for example, to do an analysis for the city of Kitchener, where we were looking at sort of the ability of our tree canopy to cool, thanks to open data, we're be able to access data that we wouldn't usually be able to afford. So the USGS, they provide the landside satellite information, and this costs millions of dollars per week, roughly, to maintain these satellites, and that's coming from the US citizen taxpayer money. But through open data, this data is accessible. We can get it. We can do things like create a heat map for our cities and use this to sort of identify areas that are more impacted by heat stress, or areas that maybe we need to do more tree canopy cover. We can compare this data with our own data, which I did in this case, where we can see actually our tree canopy cover is helping reduce temperatures across the city. And so this is really helping us make smart decisions, like, oh, is it even worth that we're tree planting? How do we even get the data to confirm that? Well, thanks to open data, especially the USGS Landsat stuff, they've been providing open data for years. We're able to access really expensive data for free, and that's fantastic. Business growth and innovation, and this is when I was preparing for this, I was really trying to think of like some really good open data examples, and one is like so obvious, it's in front of us all the time, and that's weather forecasting. So most of us consume, maybe some of us hardcore weather people are consuming it exactly from Environment Canada. But Environment Canada provides all their forecast information for free through their API every minute. So companies companies have been able to use this to sort of create their own businesses, and quite successful businesses. And so one example is the Weather Network. They're consuming the weather data from Environment Canada. They're putting their own sort of twist on it, having their own analysts maybe make some adjustments to it. But the base of that data is coming from Environment Canada. And it's not just limited to just sort of the Canada example of the Weather Network, but other countries that make apps that want to have it worldwide accessible, like this German one, ArcGISOnline, they're also going to be consuming the weather data from the Environment Canada API. And so there are ways to make money in it, and it's good. It's a benefit for everyone. Like, this is a really great example where sort of the Weather Network is able to put on, like, take government information, put an extra sort of spin in the way of delivery that people obviously like to consume. That's why they use their apps. And this is really a good sort of cooperation of sort of open data and business. Some other examples are just thinking about Google Maps and knowing which roads are closed. That information has to come from somewhere, not just phone data. So that data comes from us. So the region of Waterloo, for example, in Kitchener, we provide Waze, which is, I think, a subsidiary of Google. We provide them with information of roads and when they're going to be closed. And they can use that and integrate that into the Google apps. And then when you're driving that the navigation changes to make sure that you don't go down that road. Hopefully not. And this is another good cooperation of that open data. So there's no way we have the means to create such a incredible navigation app such as Google Maps, or that's able to service everyone. And so this cooperation again is sort of creating data we have, giving it to another business to create a service that people really want and use and consume, and that's really healthy for everyone. Okay, so this is the question I like. Why is all data not open data? So why don't we just throw everything out on our portal? And I guess, yeah, for many of you, this is obvious, who've already working within your municipalities. But for some, it might not be so obvious, especially for our citizens. I think this is a big question. So number one answer, right, is we want to protect everyone's privacy. So any personal information, if you're not a public figure, really needs to be kept private. So personal information collected and stored by the city needs to be kept safe and confidential. And that's sort of like, whatever we do, that's the primary focus, right? Privacy is important, and we do protect that. The other one is the city doesn't own everything. And yeah, there might be some Terranet users out there. We understand we can't post a lot of that parcel data that we have. So some of the data we use is licensed, and there are constraints for sharing it. We do find ways to still share this information, but we can't just sort of hand out the full data set for everyone to use because we don't own the data set. The other point why data is not all open, right? In this one, right, it takes a lot of work to prep that data, right? Thinking about privacy, making sure that it passes license agreements, and then going into the maintenance. If we're going to put data out there, it has to be good quality. We need to clean it. We need to provide quality assurance. There's ongoing maintenance, so that data has to be stored somewhere. It has to be pushed out somewhere. There's processes and workflows to push that data out. Those connections have to be kept going and maintained. So there's also IT infrastructure. So are you hosting this on your own server? Are you renting server space, or is it just getting pushed out onto ArcGIS Online? And then usually there's also still some license agreements. So there's a lot of work, legal, privacy, support, and more. So it really takes a lot of work. And I know with like all the tools and all the data out there, it seems like it's quite easy just to put it out there, but there's really a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes to make sure that we're having good data and that it's out there and that it's constantly out there. Yeah. Right, and so there are a bunch of open data types, documents, tabular, and spatial data. So the documents, you can think of the PDF, Word documents, HTML, or other formats, reports, strategic plans, minutes from council chamber meetings. Those are sort of the document stuff, information, and sometimes they're tied into the same portal as spatial data, sometimes not. Ideally, there is some way of connecting them, but usually it's different teams that are working on sort of municipal documents and spatial data. So sometimes there's a disconnect, but ideally we want to have them all in one place. Tabular stuff, so spreadsheets, so expense reports, maybe air quality data, election results, and then geospatial data. And yeah, I saw a lot of hands up at the beginning, so we have a lot of spatial data experts. So I'm going to give you the basic refresh just for fun. So right, what is spatial data, right? We have points, lines, and polygons. And most of these have different fields and records attached to each of this location data, but we also have our raster information. So if we have spatial data and open data, it's not limited just to point, line, and polygon, but we could also put other forms of spatial data on there, like a digital terrain model showing us the heights across the city for every pixel of an image, or land use, or our ortho imagery. Those will all come through raster data. So even though it's not in our typical record format, right, it's good to remember that our raster data is also something we can put out there in our open data portals as well. And yeah, spatial data is not that complicated. So basically, it's just like any table. We have records, and then we just more or less have an extra column that stores that geometry location information. So this is just looking at garbage cans. This would be the XY location and UTM coordinates of where that garbage can is, and then we can see the different fields. So it's just a table with spatial information. So if you're not used to spatial data, and you'll go to open data portals and you'll find out that most of it is spatial, don't be intimidated by that, right? The table information is still there. A lot of analysis you can still do without having to actually focus on the spatial element. So like thinking about air quality measurements, it's good to have that spatial element if you're really looking for areas impacted, but if you just want to generally know sort of air quality, mean air quality conditions across an area, you don't need the spatial information here. You can still do the analysis with just the fields that you have. Okay, and where do we find open data? So there are portals everywhere. So there's the ArcGIS open data hubs. These are very popular because right? They're helping with that infrastructure. You just push the data out there, they're going to store it and help make it findable. They're making ways to view details, look at metadata, click on, sort of interact with the data, and that exists. And so it's really popular that people are using the ArcGIS data hubs, but not everyone is using it. I think environment, is it our federal government, that they have sort of their own portal, which is okay. So right, and really the easiest way to find open data, so if you're starting a project, just type open data and whatever it is you're looking for. Like, it's really that easy to start looking for open data. And putting in open data when you're searching for data is really useful, because usually if you're going to get data, that's where it's going to be, if you're going to find data. Right, so unlocking open data. So one of the barriers can be like, how do we consume the data? So first, to access the data, for example, the like Environment Canada, if you have an ArcGIS GeoHub, you're able to consume the data through the open data portal. So usually there's like APIs. Most of the data you can consume using basic software. So using a web browser for free. You can use Google Docs to look at documents. And then Esri ArcGIS Online also has some online tools that you can use to consume and even upload your own spatial data. And then you can also go a little more advanced, right? We can create workflows with more sort of hands-on customizable software, which is usually going the programming route. So using R or Python or QGIS. And I'll give you an example of sort of how easy it is to consume data from these ArcGIS open data portals. Okay, so at the City of Kitchener, we have our own portal. And I'm just going to give you a quick tour of it. So let me just switch over screens. Okay, great. Okay, so here, right, the easiest way to look for an open data portal is to search for it. So I'm going to find it not with a link I have already, but I'm just going to search open data, City of Kitchener. Right, here we go. You can go to right away to our open data page, where it just provides some details, sort of what open data is, and then we can go right into our GeoHub. Right, so on our GeoHub, you can explore and search data. So we can just search data through here. You can see some of the searches that I was looking for. At our City Kitchener portal, we also sort of try to create some groups of data that you can explore. So based on themes, just to make it a little easier to manage the hundreds of data sets that we have available. So here's one for looking at environment and urban forestry. Here's just giving to some links of some of the sort of analysis that we've done with open data. So I mentioned earlier using satellite imagery in our tree inventory to look at how we're cooling our city. We have a story map here that you can explore how that was done. And also with our open data, some other companies have been doing some really cool things. So since we've been putting it up there, so for example, Google, they did a research paper on sort of seeing how they could automatically classify trees based on street view imagery. And so that would help with sort of quickly filling in tree inventories. And then also our open data has been sort of taken and consumed also to create classifications of just the general tree canopy cover. So people are using open data. Businesses like to use open data because it's a quick way to get data to test things. Yeah. So we'll just go back to explore data set. So we have, we can search for data here. So if I'm interested in sort of building footprints, let's just type in buildings. and we can sort of see what we get returned. We can just search for City of Kitchener, and then we can see building outlines. Right, so this is what I was saying, why this portal is so nice. We can just click on some of the features and we can see the attributes already right away. But we can also find ways to consume this data. So we can click download, and you can download it in different formats. CSV, that won't give us the spatial information, that's just the table. But using a shapefile, GeoJSON file geodatabase, we can get that spatial information. Now, what's really cool about this open data portal is, yeah, this is nice, we can download it, but sometimes if you're creating an application from it, you want that data to be updated live. You don't want to have to click and download this data all the time. And so using, where is that? Let's go back, more information. We go to view full details. You can find more information on the data set, like attributes, but we can also look at API resources. So we can basically take these links and consume them, for example, in R or Python or QGIS or your ArcGIS Pro, and you can get that service and data live. And so when we at the City of Kitchener make an update to the data, you also get that update to the data without having to check all the time and download the most recent one. So this is a huge enabler in terms of workflow. If you're using this data and you need the most up-to-date data, you can get it without having to manually download. Okay, and so I'll just show you a quick example now of how we can actually consume this data. Quick hands up, how many of you have used R before? Okay, yeah, Kelly. Jason, okay, we have a couple. Good, so this demo is like really short, really easy. I'm going to show you how we can consume and view data in R with just a few lines of code. So here at the buildings layer, let's say we want to pull in building outlines into R or R, so we want to do some other analysis, do some statistical analysis with this data perhaps. We basically just copy the service URL. And then I already have an RStudio document open. And we would paste that into we'd create a sort of an object with that URL. And then we'd be able to pull it. So this is a simple script in R. So for those of you who may not be familiar, R is a free and open source statistical, I like to call it geocomputing software, because you can do a lot of spatial things with it. Basically, so to do this, we'll call a library called SF that allows us to handle spatial data, and then a library to view the data. So here we define, let's sort of open our libraries. Here we'll define our URL. Here we're just telling our script that we want to load that service URL. Here we just want to look at the attribute information, and then here we're going to create a map. So let's just run this fast. Now I used the building outline example here because I wanted to show you that with larger data sets, it does take a little more time to consume the data. So just because it's not appearing right away, if you're ever doing this, don't panic that it's not coming. Large data sets do take longer to consume. There we go. So we can we view the data. So we can see we're getting our table. We've uploaded the spatial data into R, and then we can quickly view it as well. So I'll just use the map view function to do that. And what I'm really using this is sort of encouraging you who feel like frustrated, those of you who feel frustrated and constrained with the analysis that you're doing with open data, with sort of some of the software, you can just use R, for example, to jump in really quick into some spatial data and map it. Right, there was no downloading. I didn't have to download anything to view this data. So this is a quick way to sort of observe and consume the data. If you want to not do it through the portal, right? I can click on the attributes, see the attributes for different objects. So that's just a neat thing I wanted to show you that you can do to consume open data live. Okay, so what do we want to do? Okay, yeah, and so I'll share the slides with you later, and you'll be able to also see that script that was used. And again, it's easier than you think to bring in data. It's actually quite easy. Okay, so let's do a quick activity, a scavenger hunt. So we'll use the QA. My question is, I would like you to go into the City of Kitchener's open data portal and try to find something called the address proximity directory. And this is something we've created that has, with each address, it sort of puts a lot of important information related to the address, closest pool, who's the counselor. So in the QA, let's just see if you can locate City Hall at the City of Kitchener and find the closest park, closest swimming pool, closest splash pad, and the email of the counselor that would be for City Hall in Kitchener. So just give it a go, and I'll try to answer any questions that we might have so far as you're giving it a go. I'll just check. So I'll just give everyone 5 minutes to search for this, and we will see what you find. Put your answers as you find them in the QA.
Jason, sorry to interrupt. I have opened the chat, so if you want to leverage that for the scavenger hunt, it should now be accessible to attendees.
Okay, great. So yeah, you can just put your answers in the chat. That seems like a much easier approach. Yeah, great, thanks. Who's going to be the fastest? Okay, so while you're searching, Fallon from the Region Appeal sort of asks, how does Kitchener ensure data accuracy in the context of quality assurance procedures for their publicly available open data, especially core data sets like streets, address points, parcel data? So much of our workflow is done through FME. So we will, like daily, we're doing data quality checks using FME. And if anything sort of happens, so in FME, we usually create logs. And if anything happens where that script didn't run right, an error popped up in that script, or we didn't want that script to finish because there's an error, that pops up in the log. That log of errors gets emailed, and sort of those quality issues get sorted out through that. So we sort of have a routine set up to handle any quality assurance and quality check problems. Yeah, we're really lucky at City of Kitchener. We have a team that is really focused on quality assurance, and so there's a lot of due diligence to make sure things that happen. And a lot of the quality assurance comes through making sure we create automated pipelines. And if we create in our pipelines for creating the data, we also have set up flags in case this data doesn't make sense. So if someone put in some data that doesn't sort of match what should be there, some red flags will be put up, and we will go and address those. Right, Jonathan asks, do you use AI to review the R scripts? I don't use it to review, but I would encourage actually everyone to use ChatGPT to try, if you're new to R or you need to learn to consume it in Python, for example, you want to maybe integrate it into some of your ArcGIS Pro Python scripts that you're creating. Use ChatGPT, ask it to do it, and like I've done some of that myself, and it's actually really effective and it's really useful. It can save a lot of time searching, through Stack Overflow for some of the answers. Yeah. Okay, great. All right. So we were able to find a great hung. We have yeah, that's right, Victoria Park. So is the closest park. The swimming pool is the Harry Class swimming pool, splash pad, Victoria Park splash pad, and the counselor is Stephanie Stretch. I pointed you to this data because I think this is sort of one of our most useful ones, I think, for citizens and even people who want to create applications using our city data to use, because it really sort of connects the individual households to sort of the environment that's around them without anyone having to do their own spatial analysis. So really, individuals don't have to go in and do where is the closest pool. We've done that already, and that's why this is really a fantastic layer. Yeah, it's just sort of creating, again, right, with our open data, we want to make it sort of easy for people to grab and consume. And this is one of the data sets that we do use. And so this is, I'm not sure exactly which approach we're using to create it. So either we're doing spatial triggers to locate the closest things, or we might have an FME script that's sort of running and identifying all the closest data and packaging it already for people to consume in the open data. Yeah, great. Okay, so we saw sort of, oh, nice, Melanie, you got it. So GIS, what is GIS? So most of the things we've seen have been sort of spatial related, and a lot of open data portals are spatial. If you're new to spatial data, just to get you on board, GIS is sort of a geographic information system. It's a powerful tool that allows us to collect, organize, visualize, analyze, and a lot more recently predict all kinds of information about places and locations. And it's really about creating sort of a tool and sort of a set of processes that allow us to make smarter decisions. So really, this whole data collection, analysis, predicting, data quality, all of that is sort of tied into GIS. And really, like, we want to focus on, at least in the municipalities, really making those smarter decisions, where to build new housing, make roads safer, protect the environment, and so much more. Okay, now we're coming up to GIS in the cloud. So there's some software you can download, and you have your desktop GISs. So the most common one being ArcMap, ArcGIS Pro, or QGIS. But we also have GIS in the cloud, and so we have some. I think the most common one is we have ArcGIS Online. A lot of us use that. It not only allows us to put our data on it, but it also is an environment to create applications. for people to consume the data and to visualize the data. So that's why it's a really sort of easy choice a lot of the time. So a lot of the in-house, you don't have to do a lot of in-house development to use this. But there are other cloud softwares like Mapbox as well. Of course, most of these you have to pay for because there is some sort of infrastructure behind them supporting them and a team also supporting them as well. Yeah. So ArcGIS Online, it's a cloud-based software environment for making maps and analyzing data. It allows us to share map. It also allows us to share data to specific groups and everyone. Okay, so we're going to move on to getting sort of the hands-on experience with ArcGIS Online. I think what we'll do now is, so I'm just going to share with everyone. I'll just stop sharing for a second. And I'm going to share a link to the document. And I'm going to post that in the chat. So just bear with me for a second. Okay, so I put in a PDF link to the document, so the tutorial that we'll go through. So we'll basically go through an example of consuming traffic collision data, open data, traffic collision data for the city of Kitchener. I think what we'll do is we're going to, here we go, I'm just going to share my screen again. Okay. So let's take just a quick 10-minute break. So we'll be back here at 11:42. But oh, sorry, just a second. Share my screen. Okay. So what I would like you to do though, also in that break, is go through the first page of the tutorial. So go to arcgis.com, sign in, and set up your own public account. So no cheating here. Don't use, if you already have access using your email, use a different email, just so you can also experience sort of what a citizen would go through if they want to create their own account. So just go through that first page, set up your account. It's relatively straightforward. Fill in the information, agree, click next, and yeah, and if you have any troubles, just mention them in the chat, and I'll try to help you. But other than that, yeah, we'll meet back here at 11:42, and then we'll start going through the beginning of the tutorial. If you're back already and just waiting, you can just use this time to sort of explore what's really available. Like you'll notice that there's a lot of limitations. Like if you're used to having your municipal access, you'll see not everything. You'll see some things familiar, but not everything. Not all the apps or features are available. So there definitely are some limitations to the free account. I think what also is neat, so if you're providing this to citizens or new users who haven't used this before, there are links down here at the bottom for people to jump into to learn. So what is GIS, some tutorials for using a public account. Yeah, so there's a lot of things. We don't have to create a lot of things from scratch. There are tutorials and things for people to work through. But definitely if you want to like promote your own open data, it's much more useful to create a tutorial for your organization that gets them to consume some of your data. and yeah, the basics as well of what GIS is. So they are making it easier for non-GIS experts to jump in. Right, that's a good point, Jonathan. There's also that Esri Ambassador program, which you can volunteer for, or also use it to help sort of link people who are participating in it to come into the classroom and teach some of these tools. Okay, yeah, welcome back. I just give a hands up so I know who has returned back. I just want to see if we should get moving, or I will probably get moving anyways. I'm just curious. Okay, great, fantastic. All right. Okay, so this first part of our tutorial, we're just basically going to go over how we can use ArcGIS Online to view data. So just exploring data. We're not going to do any deep analysis yet. We're just going to sort of how do we bring data into it, especially that's already existing in the data hub. So we'll go to a map. We'll go to your map tab here, and I'm just following through the instructions. So this is page 5, section 2, mapping and spatial data analysis. So let's think of our problem right here. So as a part of the City of Kitchener strategic plan, we're committed to the Vision Zero strategy to reduce serious injuries and death due to traffic collisions. We want them to be zero within our community. So our question is that we came to the data portal, sort of, we're interested if traffic collision numbers have been going down since interest in the program started in 2019. So we can first add data. So we'll go to layers. And just a quick overview here, a bunch of tools. So we can view tables, change the base map. We'll start creating charts, looking at the legend. We'll really focus more up here today. So let's add a layer. We'll go to browse layers. Okay, and we're going to browse using ArcGIS Online. So click there. Here you can see all of the different data sets from different portals that have been put online. Here we want to find the ones for City of Kitchener. So we'll do City of Kitchener. Okay, and we can see here we have City of Kitchener layers. It's really important when you're searching data. It sort of has that green check mark here, right? This is saying this is coming from our organization, not someone else who created data, because people can take this data, do something with it and put it back on, and it might not be your data. So I think it's important to if you have users, make them aware that they're looking for the check mark, making sure it matches with the username. So we can see all of the different layers that we have available. We have Manitoba up here. What we want to look for, though, is we want to search for the traffic collisions data. So you can either scroll through and see if you can find it. I prefer searching. So here, traffic closures, traffic collisions. Just click the add button and this will add it to your map. Okay, great. We can close this. We'll hit close. So we've added the traffic collision data. One of the first things you might want to do when you go in there is play with symbology. So to change the symbology, we would go to properties, edit layer style, style options here, and then we can change it, for example, in here. So I can click this pencil. You can make it into just a single point. You can change the size. You can also make the size adjustable. So when we're scrolling, it stays consistent. And that's just a nice way to view the data. So I think that looks pretty enough. Okay. Okay, so we really we've taken the data in, we simplified it. Now we'll click done to finish here. right, so we simplified it, but right now we're looking at this map. It's really difficult to see, are there any patterns? Are there any areas that have higher collisions than other areas, or more collisions than other areas? And so there's some ways in mapping we can do to better sort of view this. And one of the ways is using the aggregation tool. And this allows us to create clusters. So we go to clustering here. And so this is basically just grouping the points together within a window, and allows us to quickly sort of see areas that have higher, sort of aggregated areas of higher traffic collisions. We can also sort of play around with some of the parameters, so we can sort of change the visualization. We can change the radius, so how many points are collected within each area, to also simplify it a bit. Yeah, so this is a really quick way to explore the data and sort of, like I said, this was really fast. So we loaded the data, we changed the style, we used the aggregation, and we can already see some useful information. We can clearly see downtown Kitchener is a hot spot for traffic accidents. The mall is a high concentrated area, another shopping area. So I guess we're seeing a little bit of a pattern that any shopping area, you're likely to have more, tend to have more collisions. Now, that's just from the quick visual look here, but we might want to dive into that more detail. Okay, what we also have, again, remember, spatial information also usually has a table. So if we go back to layers, we can look at traffic collisions, and we can show table. Let's get rid of this. And we can see the actual information. So here we can see we can quickly, pardon me, I'm just going a little fast. You can click on a field, you can go to information, and then you can see some statistics for that field. So it's, for example, if we want to understand the range of data we have, we're looking at accident year. And here we can see, so it started in 2015, and then it goes to 2022. And the number of records, so approximately 9,000. So this is a quick way to explore the data, see the data range. We can also clean this up as well. We can rename it, make it look prettier. So just call it traffic collisions. All right, so some basic stuff, just some house cleaning stuff. And we can also save the map as well. So you can just click save map as. So I'm going to call this one GOOD24 traffic collisions. Not the right spot now. I can create a folder to put it in. Add tags. So this allows us to search for it. And I can add a description. So map of traffic collisions. Was it 2015 to 2019? Or sorry, 2022. I think what we saw there. Okay, so we've sort of been able to explore the data, explore it spatially, but we want to look for some trends in the data. And that's what's really neat about this map viewer is we can also create charts with the data. We don't have to export the data, open in Excel and do it. So this is also sort of breaking down another barrier. So we'll do this, we'll do an example. So we'll go to click on the layer. Oh, sorry, we'll go to layers, click on the layer, and then we'll go to configurable charts. We'll click add chart. And then we're going to create a line chart. Okay, so we're going to fill in some of this information to create it. So for the x-axis, we're going to choose accident year. Okay, we're going to leave the aggregation as the count because we want to know how many counts per year. And then we can also sort of clean up. So we can also make it a little cleaner. So we can take away, if we go to axes, we can take away the 1000 separator. This allows us to see the year without the commas. We can go to general. This allows us to change the title. So for example, I can change the title to count by accident year, to total traffic collisions. I can change the axis title, x-axis. So we can quickly make a chart that's also presentable. So you could copy and paste that, or use or export it. You can also add a description. So I put in a description in the tutorial that would be useful. It's always useful if you're creating a chart and you're making a chart public, that you have information on where the data came from. So in this case, the traffic collision data was collected by the region police reporting center, given to the region, and then from the region, it was collected from the city. It was collected by the city of Kitchener, and then also a link to where you can access the data. So in general, we can see there's been a trend of reduced traffic collisions each year, with the exception of 2019. And then, with the exception of 2019, where we experienced a spike, but perhaps we're like interested in a bit more, right? The statistics, just looking at the counts alone, aren't telling us the whole story. So we want to break this down into more detail. So one way we can break this chart into more detail is we can create a new one. So let's save this chart. Let's add a new one. Let's do another line chart. We're going to do the same thing. So we're going to do by accident year. And then we're going to split by it. And this is going to allow us to use categories. And so we have a classification of the accident. And then we can start to see sort of more details of what's happening in the chart. So here we can see definitely non-fatal injuries have been gradually decreasing. We can see reports that are going to the police department only are also decreasing. And yeah, fatal injuries, they're quite infrequent. There's not a lot of them, as we can see them. They're down here. Again, yeah, these charts are also interactive. So if you put your cursor over one of the data points, you'll also get some of the information as well. Okay, so we've seen that you're looking still at the data in general, but perhaps we want to see, explore if traffic collisions injuring pedestrians have been decreasing over time. And to do this, we'll have to filter some of the data. So to filter the data, what we can do is we click on our layer, click filter. We want to add an expression. And then we're going to use the drop-down to select pedestrian is involved. Pedestrian involved is true. and save. You can see this chart has automatically been updated to the filter. So here we're just looking at traffic accidents where a pedestrian was involved. So, and this is good news. When we're looking at the chart, we can see generally there is a decrease over time since 2019 when people first started getting interested, even if we're focusing there. But in general, of the number of pedestrians that are getting injuries from a class or being involved in traffic accidents. Okay, so yeah, I am just skipping some of the things. You can go through them by yourself in more detail. Some of the steps. I'm just trying to make sure I cover most of the important points. Again, you can save your map. And if you wanted to access it again, you would go, so let's go back to the main page. You would log in, you would go to content. Here, you would find the folder you saved it in. You click on it, open a map viewer, and you'll be right back to your workspace. That's really handy. And then also for the citizen, like this is a lot you can do for free. So this is pretty fantastic. I said it's your turn, but let's sort of create an app with this. So we've created some charts. We can go back and see them here. But what we can also do is create an app from this. So we've created this by we want to sort of share this information in a way that can be consumed. And so just the map alone, the charts are hidden. It's not so easy if we shared this map. So what we can do is we can create an app. We'll create an instant app. And there are a bunch of apps already made, so you don't have to design them from scratch. We'll try the chart viewer because we've created some charts, so we'll choose that one. Let's just call it that. Let's keep it easy. Sometimes it does get hung up, so you just have to you have to go back to your content folder you created and go to it again. So it is there. If you want to edit it, we go to configure. Which of course is not working today. It wouldn't be a technical workshop without a technical glitch. It's even there. All right. So I'm not sure why it's not letting us configure, but we can go in and view sort of and get a rough idea of what we've created in this app. So you can see we have the map showing the points. We can see how the collisions are decreasing over time. You can click on the different charts that we created and have them uploaded. And we can share this links and make it public so someone can access that. So we can click share, click everyone public, save. We have to make that map public as well. And there we go. So basically you can take this link, anyone who has this link, you can embed it into your website or share it in email. But whoever has this link will have access to this app and this information that they can go through and play with. Yeah, let's just try configure again. How are we going to get there today? maybe some of the policies changed. Okay. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. You can see there's an exercise on the top of page 9. Now it's your turn, where you try to look at traffic collision injuries involving cyclists. So you just go ahead and do that on your own, looking through the data and finding the right field to filter by. But we won't cover that now, just for time wise. Yeah, please go through the steps again at home if you want. Please use this tutorial, like adapt it for yourself as well if you want to use it, and share it with your municipality for your own data. I think that's a great idea. I guess really what I'll use the rest of this time now is to answer any questions. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. Happy to answer. And again, thank you for everyone for participating today. Okay, Kelly asks, I'm just getting started with an open data hub. Any suggestions for where to store the data? ArcGIS Enterprise or geodatabases? So it depends. So if you're using the ArcGIS, if you have an agreement to use ArcGIS Online, I think you can just push that data over to ArcGIS Online, depending, I think, on how many credits. Melanie might be able to answer that question a bit better, but what's nice if you're using the ArcGIS portal, you're just sort of putting the data and then they will store it for you on there. So you just have to have the data clean and ready, and then you can use Python or FME scripts if you want to automate putting it online and having it up to date. But yeah, I think otherwise, like, it really depends on, you know, like your infrastructure. If you have your own server and you want to create something that's not ArcGIS and you have the support to do that, you can also go that way as well. But you just need that in-house expertise to help support that, and that can be difficult sometimes. Okay, Jonathan, great. How can we connect your tutorial with Justin's dashboard tutorial? I haven't seen Justin's dashboard tutorial yet, but definitely I can share the PowerPoint and documentation. Yeah. Right, anonymous attendee, it looks like you federated with your neighboring municipal portals and regional portal. Did you encounter any issues? I wish I could give you an answer on this. I wasn't here during the federated, during that. That was Melanie Warwick, our manager, I believe, did that. If you have questions about that, maybe she can answer as well if she's still around. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry, I don't have any tips on that one. All right, Jonathan asks if you can create, like, how do you create story maps? You can do that. So you take your data, go to ArcGIS Story Map Builder. Here we go. And you can start working through your story map. So it gives you all the tools. Your map is already integrated. You can add other. So if one way to, like, make it really easy is you can copy and paste. So if you use the classic snipping tool to screen grab just the chart, and then you could add it as an image in here, and then you could sort of populate your story map that way. That's really the fastest way. But yeah, it's really easy. Just again, go to that data layer, create app, good ArcGIS story map, and then you'll be able to create and publish and share a story map. They cannot create dashboards using the free account, so that's what Justin's asking. It's really limited to just some instant apps that they have and the story map. really, you can do a lot with story maps. So you can basically create a dashboard with story maps. If you find creative ways to sharing, like if you just make your instant app show a chart completely and then you embed that instant app into your story map, you would be able to find a creative way to create a dashboard using story maps. But yeah, the personal one is quite limited. And again, I think it's important to note the sharing and permission. So let's go back to the content here. So when you're working on your data and map, right, if you don't necessarily have, it doesn't have to be public every time. You can just have it private as well. And I think if you have users or citizens, it's important to know that as well, that sort of it gives them that freedom that they can work on something without thinking someone is watching. Lindy asks, have I used the GIS map in Power BI? And if so, have you had any issues? I haven't used it in Power BI, and I haven't really used Power BI, but if there's any option just to embed an HTML frame in Power BI, you just copy and paste the link into there, and you should be able to see the dashboards or apps or maps that you've created in that interface. So that'd be one way to link them together. So Jonathan, you're asking, could nonprofit instances of ArcGIS Online be a part of a group of municipalities for sharing a dashboard using open data categories? Yeah, maybe you can just extend. I'm not quite sure I understand that question just right. Maybe you can extend the question a bit. I think, well, okay, maybe so depending on your licensing, you could provide users, like some municipalities could provide specific users with access to some of the tools and dashboards. Like that is available. That's really up to the individual municipalities whether or not they want to create and share a user for outside organizations to use their data. It gets a bit tricky because you don't want outside users being able to edit and change a lot of things in the data. So if you're going that way, oh yeah, no, Melanie's got it. It goes against licensing. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Melanie. Always forget that licensing. So I guess then the best way would be you would have to have your own, and then they'd have to be federated together. Yeah. Thanks, Melanie, for helping me with that answer. Okay, great. That seems that's it for today. Again, thanks for everyone for coming today. If there's one takeaway, please sort of use this material if you are working for a municipality and think of ways you can use that to help get people involved with the open data and using it. A lot of us are putting the open data out there, but it's not clear how it's consumed. Maybe some people just don't have the tools, and this is just an example of some of the tools they can use.